I want to talk about this. I think it's important. You guys asked me to talk about it. Heritage Foundation, part of Project 2025, they want to put together basically these marriage camps. This came out a few weeks ago. I'm getting into it now. Let's watch some content on it and let's discuss it because I think it's important. So here's a video about group behind Project 2025 pushes marriage boot camps. Let's check it out.
Vice President J.D. Vance thinks Americans aren't having enough kids.
I want more babies in the United States of America.
And the Trump administration believes having kids starts with getting married, saying the, quote, traditional family unit has come under recent cultural attack. That's why the federal government is pouring money into marriage counseling programs, dubbed by some marriage boot camps.
I was skeptical at first because I'm like, we don't need to go to that. But once we went through the class, I learned a lot. And actually...
Wait, are they actually saying they did it? They actually went to one?
I would do it again.
Tanja and Freddie Gaddis completed an 8-week class just after their wedding in 2024, where they dove deep on issues like how to communicate better.
Wait, are they just talking about marriage counseling? Because most people are recommended to do some version of marriage counseling before marriage. In Catholicism, you have to do counseling. You're supposed to before you get married. And then a lot of people do recommend marriage counseling. Like some people, is that what they're saying it was? Or is it something different? And I'll show you from Heritage Foundation's official website how they explain it. But
more than a year in to the marriage, how's it going?
It's going well. Don't get us wrong now. It's not perfect, but it's perfect with us.
Red flag. Anytime someone says, even as a joke, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. Also, Barack Obama and a picture behind her is hilarious because if this is the Heritage Foundation boot camp, what is that? But I don't like when people say that. When people say that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that the Heritage Foundation is going to force people into quote boot camps to save marriages that should have failed. Because they want you to settle so you can make babies, which is what our grandmas did and our moms did, and they were divorced and or in abusive relationships. That's what I think this is. That I think is a disgusting plan to force people to settle simply to push out babies. Disgusting.
Learning how to work through.
I'm sure they're very nice people, this couple here, and I'm sure they're very nice, but
the disagreements.
The program they went to, run by Auburn University, funded in part by federal programs that have been around for a while. And now it's one of more than 100 that are receiving portions of a new 9-figure federal grant. President Trump is also now giving money directly to newborns in his 2025 budget bill with so-called Trump accounts for long-term investments. And on top of that, the Heritage Foundation, authors of Project 2025, want the president to renew his vow.
Wait, so is this separate? Are these separate things from Project 2025?
With a new push, in their words, to save America by saving the family. Some of their ideas? Discouraging online dating, direct payments for newlyweds, more tax incentives for married couples and kids, and yes, marriage boot camps. Not just funded, but run by the federal government, specifically by Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Department of Health and Human Services.
People need to understand the importance of marriage.
The total cost of Heritage's plan? $280 billion over the next decade.
The modest investment, I think, will pay off tremendous dividends because we'll have a healthy, growing population in the best ideal circumstances.
He's talking about population because the U.S. may be staring down a growing shrinking problem, as some demographers warn that the country's population could decline soon, for the first time since the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776. The U.S. fertility rate hit an all-time low in 2024. Now experts say a combination of the declining birth rate and the Trump administration's immigration crackdown is slowing population growth faster than expected. Data from Pew Research found that for the first time in 50 years, more immigrants are leaving the U.S. than coming in. It's why you're hearing about so-called pro-natalist policies a lot more, pushed by people like Elon Musk, who has fathered at least a dozen children of his own.
And I think for most countries, they should view the birth rate as the single biggest problem they need to solve.
But some experts say policies need to go beyond paying for people just to have more babies. The director of the Carolina Population Center at UNC telling us in an earlier interview, investing in long-term support for families is just as important.
Yeah, tell me about what you're going to invest in: education, infrastructure, housing. If you're telling me you want to invest in the family, so many people would be more than willing to have children but can't afford them. Make life affordable. Right?
Keeping moms in the labor market is going to be important if we have fewer people overall, but also sort of investing heavily in young children to make sure that they are in safe childcare environments, that they are getting education.
Oh, hello.
Educational starts early in life.
More money for families has long been a priority for Democrats, with Republicans generally focusing on cultural issues.
I think if you really give people a sense of ownership in this country, a sense that they can build something, build a nest egg, build a family, that is the trick to reinvigorating the American dream.
Now, year 2 of Trump 2 may focus on both.
The whole thing blows up. And John Allen is joining us now. So what's your sense, John, on reporting this out? Is this something that could get bipartisan support from Democrats too?
I think there are pieces of it that could get bipartisan support. We've already seen some of that. The baby bonds that President Trump did in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. There's something he had talked about before. There's something Kamala Harris had talked about on the campaign trail. Originally, I believe, started with Cory Booker, the New Jersey Democrat. So I think there's definitely interest on the Democratic side in doing some of these pro-family things when you talk about expanding child tax credits, things like that. But the Heritage Foundation's price tag for its plan is $280 billion over a decade, which is a lot of money. And I think that most Democrats would like to see more resources devoted to some of the existing programs, particularly those that are aimed at the least advantaged in the country. And, what the Heritage Foundation has put out there does not necessarily do that.
John Allen, thank you very much.
Exactly. So let me show you this from heritage.org. Okay. This is from the document. It says Family Training Policy, Department of Health and Human Services, a whole government strategy would expand evidence-based programs for relationship education, parenting skills, and father involvement over the past 2 decades. Federal healthy marriage and responsible fatherhood grants have tested ways to help couples communicate better, manage conflict, and jointly support their children. The results have been modest, but generally positive. For example, some programs modestly improved co-parenting and financial stability for participating couples. Preventative health programs can also reduce family stress by, for example, addressing a substance abuse or mental health issue in the family, or mental health issues that often underlie family breakdown. Okay, fine. Sounds good. But then they go on to say a related idea would combine several of these elements into a marriage boot camp for cohabitating couples with children. Recruitment could be done through local nonprofits that work with families, as well as radio, transit, and social media advertisements. The federal government has earmarked grant funds for marriage education programs in the past, including $35 million for one initiative called Helping Every Area of Relationship Thrive Heart. Now, here's the thing that I think is really, really important about this concept. That's straight from their website. Is there is something we need to realize about life, which is in some ways we want to be able to rely on the government to institute programs that are safe. The issue is they're coming from unsafe sources. I'm going to relate this to something that might be more digestible to understand. Do you remember when Jordan Peterson, his license was being threatened by the Canada board, and he needed to go to class to re-update his language around clients, and he called it an indoctrination, propaganda thing? The dilemma is it's not what's being said. There's no problem with having systems in place to do and encourage therapy or marital counseling. The problem is who's instituting it. What is their ultimate goal? And is it evil? And Heritage Foundation is evil. So you should assume anything they have their hands in is bad, especially if you're progressive, right? That's the dilemma. I remember when Jordan Peterson called it like he was afraid, and they're like, well, how do you know it's not the government indoctrinating him with propaganda? Bro, they just don't want him to call people fat on the internet because his clients might be fat. They're questioning his transphobia because what if he has a trans client? Hello? He's not getting, so then that's why I say everything conservatives say about the Democrats, that's not the Democrats, about progressives or leftists, that's what they're doing. So conservatives are worried about propaganda from the government because their government loves pushing out propaganda. They're worried about going back to class or learning how to be kind run by liberals because they know when they do it, what they're doing. That's why they think if progressives are in control, that we will come at them. We will treat them as badly as they treat us. We don't want to treat you badly. We think no one should be treated the way you treat people. But they really believe that if we have power, we will use it to ruin their churches. Look, my personal opinion is I don't like patriarchal religions. My ethical, legal opinion is that freedom of religion is valid. Also, churches should pay taxes. But I don't think we should get rid of religion because I think that's your right to be religious. I believe in freedom. The issue is they don't think it's your right to be gay or trans. That's the problem. So of course, them suggesting a boot camp is scary because they believe in limiting your freedom. That's why it's scary, because it's definitely not good for us. Okay. Now, let's see here. Okay. Listen to this. This is how Fox News covers this same story. Okay. So here's how they cover it. Here we go.
But
I have really shifted the way I think. And I think this next story that we're going to tell you about the Heritage Foundation actually encapsulates the way I look at things now. I no longer look at it like tax rates are bad or, government capping things are bad. I look at everything now through a prism of what is good for families. And this is something, and that includes that.
Do families consist of non-child families? Because I'm in a family. I have a family. Is it important? Is it valid? Do you see it as what it is, a family?
What Trump is doing with credit cards and also what he's doing with.
And by the way, the answer to the Heritage Foundation would be no. To the Heritage Foundation, my marriage isn't a real marriage, or there's no point to it because we don't even have kids. And if we're not going to have kids, then they're like, then what's the point?
Preventing private equity firms from buying up homes, and so they're available to young people to buy. I think that's another great idea as well, and that's why I'm no longer, beholden to this absolutely free market dogma. I want to look at it through that prism, and the Heritage Foundation is talking about saving America by saving the family, and that to me is
that all families, all kinds of families? I did find clips from the Heritage Foundation using Black people in their as their spokespeople. I just want to say to all the people of color working for Heritage Foundation, what are we doing here? What is happening here?
absolute music to my ears. Here's some of the things that they're
Is this gay families, queer families, brown families, immigrant families? Which families?
thinking about as they're putting out their policies and suggestions for our
Chet says asterisk white families. Apparently,
our lawmakers. They want tax credits for families with more children. Of course, you guys know I'm on board with that. Discouraging online dating. Oh my God.
What is that? Discouraging online dating? What does that even mean?
Have they been through my Twitter feed? Is this how they got this? Creating marriage boot camp classes. They also want a 16-year-old requirement for social media and certain AI chatbots. I'm on board with that too. Wow, we're seeing a real shift in the way conservatives are looking at policy, guys.
I think they're plagiarizing.
Looking at policy, looking at controlling every fucking part of your life. Like, that's what's so crazy. They are literally using the government to decide what is ethically sound for your family. They are literally using the government. They're trying to utilize the government to control the morals and ethics of your personal family business. What?
You.
I'm all for it.
You've spoken.
What would marriage boot
passionately
camp
about this
look
stuff.
like? That's what I would like to.
Yeah, well,
I would like
we
to
need
be
to
in
get
on
someone.
that.
Yeah, we need to get someone from the
could.
Heritage Foundation to come here and tell us what this marriage boot camp is.
We
'cause it
could
sounds
run
really
a
good.
marriage boot camp.
Oh, because it sounds really good, she says. Oh, yeah, this marriage boot camp sounds really good. Girl, please, I'm all for marriage counseling. I'm all for going to the therapist, go to a progressive therapist, go to somebody progressive. But what are we even talking about?
You know, in the Catholic Church, you can't get married
Without
until
I said that.
classes.
unless you get what we call pre-Cana classes.
Which is good. I think it's a good idea. Like, in general, for if you're going through the religious way, I think it's a good idea in general. My partner and I didn't take any classes before getting married. We talk to our family and friends. You know, we did talk to the people who were most close to us and just, that kind of stuff. But ultimately, we're adults. We made decisions. We got married. Best decision we ever made. We're having a great time. Okay. But yeah. Chet says this is yay authoritarianism. That's what it is. It's like, they're so excited. They're like, oh, yes, I love it. Like, tell me what to do. Tell me how to think. Tell me how to be. It's like, what happened to families making those? I love it. I love when they talk about sex education in schools. They're like, let the families decide that. Now, they're like, actually, oh, don't you love that too? They want parents to have more choices when it comes to teenagers and adults to have less choices when it comes to their life because online dating apps are 18 plus. Are there teenage dating apps I don't know about? Aren't all Tinder and Hinge and everything, aren't they all 18 plus? So they are literally saying no online dating for adults. They want to control legal adult bodies, legal adult lifestyles. The fuck?
So you go to a class, literally that you will not get married until you go through that. So maybe it's something like a pre-Cana class where they make you do compatibility exams and discussions to make sure that you're on the same page when it comes to finances, when it comes to children, and how you deal with conflict resolution. Maybe that's what it is, but Heritage, let us know. I think we'd like to have that segment.
Well, but the difference is, well, not the difference because Catholics are similar. The difference is they'll be doing these boot camps in order to encourage you or pressure you into having babies. That's why it's scary. They're not marriage classes that are neutral. It's marriage classes so you can be, this feels like a sci-fi film when they're like, choose your partner. Number 33 and 55 will have the most high compatibility babies. Their offspring will be the best designed by their sperm and egg. That's what this sounds like. That's what you're sounding like right now.
Good idea. I'm Steve Doocy.
Horrible. Just absolutely gross. Hate it. Hate it. Now, this is from the Washington Examiner. This is the founder of Heritage.
And I could go, as you know all too well, all academic on you and give you the Aristotelian explanation for the importance of the family. And actually, that's really important. In short, you got to have a good family, strong families in order to have strong communities. You have to have strong communities to have, in our system, strong states. You've got to have strong states in order to have a right-sized federal government.
The Heritage Foundation is trying to shift focus from a recent staff exodus and controversies by pushing a new report on reviving marriage and birth rates in America. The group's Saving America by Saving the Family paper urges the Trump administration to boost heterosexual couples having kids through tax credits, a marriage boot.
Ding, 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 ding. Heterosexual couples. And look at this. Just for the record, this is the thing they put out. This is the section about boot camps. Look at this, though. Guys, look at this. This is what they put out. Holy fucking shit. This whole article is this long. That's what I'm saying. Girls, this whole thing is what they put out. And then they snuck in the boot camps way in there. It's only spoke about in 2 spots, and they sneak it in. That's what I'm saying. It's so insane. Oh, it's so evil.
Boot camp and even limiting commercial activity on a uniform day of rest. Heritage President Kevin Roberts called this an existential crisis during a Monday press briefing, noting U.S. birth rates have dropped to a record low of 1.59 per woman, well below the 2.1 needed to replace the population. He warned that without change, America could rely solely on immigration or technology to sustain its numbers. This comes after more than a dozen Heritage staffers left last month to join Mike Pence's group, Advancing American Freedom, and amid backlash over Roberts defending Tucker Carlson's interview with anti-Semitic figure Nick Fuentes. Roberts skipped comment on that drama, instead saying the report took 2 to 3 years to craft due to its complex
Nick Fuentes, I control your bodies. Ladies, we control your bodies.
Issues, with timing aimed for early January as Congress returns. The administration has pitched itself as pro-family, but Trump shocked conservatives last week by suggesting flexibility on the Hyde Amendment.
Love that Nick Fuentes is still single and still a virgin. Where's the wife? Why are the girls eager to date Nick Fuentes? You ever wonder that?
Which bans federal funding for abortions. Heritage stands firm against watering down Hyde, calling Trump the most pro-life president ever. Among recommendations, they want Trump to issue an executive order reviewing how federal policies impact families, like revising the child tax credit to encourage marriage. Roberts said he's confident the White House will implement ideas, citing positive Capitol Hill talks and Trump's rhetoric on this civilizational threat, though an executive order remains uncertain.
Okay, so horrible, disgusting, evil. Look at this. I went to the Heritage Foundation YouTube channel, just like, listen to this, America's future will be determined by this. This was posted 2 days ago.
This, in 1965, consider this, in 1965, close to 75% of all American households were headed by married couples. Today, it's 47%. At that time, 8% of children were born out of wedlock. Today, 40% of children are. Roughly 25% live with a single parent, the highest rate in the world. These changes matter because on average, children raised by their married biological parents have better social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes than children raised in
Ooh, you like how we slipped that in there? Biological.
single-parent homes. America is at a crossroads, and the nation's next 250 years will be determined by the strength of its families. Our new policy paper, Saving America by Saving the Family, lays out a number of proposals to create a culture of marriage that lead to a future of prosperity for generations to come. Simply put, you cannot have a strong, thriving nation without strong communities. You cannot have strong communities without strong families. And you can't have strong families without strong marriages.
Okay,
I could go, as
you know what's
you know
so
all too
frustrating?
well.
Hold on, bro.
All
She just-
academic.
You know what's so frustrating is like, I agree with that last sentence. We do need strong families. I just don't agree that they have to look the way you think they have to look. See how everything sounds good? We need strong families to have a strong country. To have, I'm like, yeah. See, your version of I don't exist. My family doesn't exist in this makeup. In your ideal world, I don't exist. See, in my ideal world, your families exist, but with the infrastructure to support them. And that's the point. I'm all here for heterosexual relationships and kids. Like, I love that you want to have babies. Like, I think that's beautiful, especially if those babies are taken care of and they're in a loving. But in your ideal world, my marriage isn't real. It doesn't exist. How devastating is that? How horribly devastating is that? That's why I say conservatives, and I know because I was raised in that bubble, they are in their heart of hearts, I think, radically often good people, but the road to hell is paved in good intentions. And so they become philosophically evil. And even if it's in the name of good, they will hurt so many people in the name of good, which then makes it evil. You can't hurt people in the name of good and call it good. And that's what they do. Okay, here's another video from Heritage. How to restore the American family.
To either take action. It's critical to either take action now and restore the American family.
Do it now, guys. If you don't do it now, the world will end. See how they do that too? They give you anxiety. If you don't do it now, what will happen in 20 years? And look, I do think from a progressive lens, we do have to tackle the no baby phenomenon and just make sure we start getting ready for that, because I'm here for it. But we will have infrastructure issues. We will have labor issues. That's okay. Let's adapt the same way we adapted when there was a boom. It will be hard and it will be rough, but I think it would be worth it. It would be worth a future of people not being forced to have babies they didn't want to have, for us to change some things up in terms of infrastructure.
Or face the reality of what the decline of the societal building block will mean for our nation. Saving America by saving the American family lays out a clear path to rebuild marriage rates, low fertility rates, and the epidemic of broken homes. This looks like eliminating marriage penalties and welfare. Married people can and will need assistance too. It also looks like supporting marriage and families through federal actions. How something helps or hurts marriage and family should always go into consideration when passing law. And providing financial incentive for marriage, childbirth, and at-home parenting. Why shouldn't every credit, program, and benefit for paid childcare also be available to parents who stay at home? We believe these reforms, along with changes in the culture, will make it easier for young people to get married and have children. We know that married families are the backbone of a healthy civil society. This is what we need to bring the American family back from the brink.
So you see how they do their little campaigns, and it almost sounds like, oh wait, let's look at the comments really fast. When people talk about family as an idea, not their family members or friends, it's something dark. A Handmaid's Tale, 40 years of defunding schools, WMCA programs after school studies, etc. Low minimum wage, high cost of living. Tell me why you would. I think this is like a misprint or a spam, but I get it. Let's see. They are responsible for Trump and the way things are today. Let's see. FDJT. What's that mean, guys? What does this mean? Charlie Kirk said this many times. Why should why should childcare be free to all people who are working? Why can't we have higher salaries for low-end workers so they can afford to have kids? Heritage Foundation is ruining America. Hey, at least the comments here are kind of hating, bro. They deserve that hate, though. Okay, crazy, just absolutely insane. Okay, hold on. So then, this was put out. Okay, this is another video on it. I like to see how people talk about it, too, to see if people are sounding the alarm or if they're acting like it's not a big deal.
Just aren't starting families as much as they used to. And the ones that people just aren't starting families as much as they used to. And the ones that do have a rockier time than before.
Oh, God, YouTube.
Where does that leave our hearts, our minds, and our nation? A new Heritage Foundation report delves into all that and offers some interesting ways to fix it. With us now is Dr. Kevin Roberts, president of the Heritage Foundation. Good to have you with us, Dr. Roberts.
Thanks so much. I'm so proud of my colleagues for issuing this landmark study. We hope that it revitalizes marriage and, for that matter, revitalizes the spirit of people welcoming children into their homes.
Certainly, it touches on a lot of things that are very meaningful to a lot of people. And to that point, there's this loneliness epidemic, according to the previous U.S. Surgeon General. People aren't having babies as much as they used to, as I just said. And even the prospect of a simple, straightforward path to all.
Oh, chat's educating me. FDJT means fuck Donald Trump. Fuck Donald J. Trump from Urban Dictionary. Fuck Donald Trump. Hey, I love that.
Age surrounded by the people we love of all generations kind of seems to be.
Yeah, chat says say it in a soft tone and the extreme will sound reasonable. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I'm so aggressive. Okay, hold on. Maybe I gotta be nicer. Go to therapy, stupid bitch. Was that nicer? Are you going to go to therapy now?
Slipping away from so many of us. So to start with, and this does come up in the report, how do you think we got here?
Well, there are certainly a lot of factors that have contributed to this problem. Some of them are cultural, some of them are social, and no doubt many of them are economic, to say nothing of individual decisions that people make, and we will always respect those individual decisions. But the real gist of the report, as you know...
No, chat, I know you weren't talking about me directly, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying I got to learn how to say things nicely so people do it. But also that doesn't work. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Why changing the way we talk is not going to convince MAGA people to all of a sudden change their values, because they don't want to hear you talk nicely, because they're going to hear it out. They're going to know you're trying to trick them. And I don't want to have to trick you to do the right thing. Just do the right thing. But I do think they do this. You're right. I think that's a good observation. They talk nicely, use good words, and they think we're all going to fall for it. I'm not going to fall for it. Because I know what conservatives ultimately want to get to. They want to get to straight heterosexual relationships are the norm, always will be the norm, and everyone else is bad. And that includes my marriage. Remember, this is personal. At the end of the day, my marriage is what's being threatened. Absolutely not.
Is that we claim that federal policy has exacerbated some of those factors by creating disincentives to marriage and, by extension, to having more children. We see that, for example, in our tax code. We see it in some safety net or welfare programs. And so the first step that we call for
I also have to say, and I mean this respectfully, I do think I'm always suspicious when Republicans highlight people of color in their ads, when this administration and everything these people do promotes the absolute deportation of Black and brown people, the imprisonment of Black and brown people. How can you sit there and use Black and brown people in your ads while everything you support policy-wise is attacking those communities? It's so gross. I hate it. It's so objectifying. It feels like when capitalistic countries peakwash like gay people during Pride. It's like, oh, or pink. What is it called? Pink washing? Is it called pink? No, pink capitalism. What is it called? Where they utilize like gay people in their ads, and then the moment it's not good anymore, they're like, bye. Like they've done throughout. I'm so offended.
Report is to eliminate all of those disincentives toward marriage. And then the second thing we call for, which is the real innovation in this study, is to flip on their head all of those programs within
rainbow
federal
capitalism. Yes, chat. Rainbow capitalism.
Policy that have anything to do with marriage, and make sure that through innovations in the child care tax credit and innovations in the usage of the adoption tax credit, that we can incentivize marriage and also childbirth.
Okay, chat brings up a great point. I remember the 90s seeing campaigns about not having many children, 2 per couple is ideal. When did it change all of a sudden? Were we supposed to be too many humans on Earth and not enough resources? We still are in many ways, but so conservatives have never adhered to that. When they start talking about resources and population and having 2 kids is perfect, people like my family, conservatives, never believed that, because conservatives would put out media saying every human being on Earth could fit in the size of could fit in the state of Texas. Did you guys ever hear that growing up as a conservative? I heard that my whole life, like, oh, Betsy, every human being on the planet could fit in Texas. I was like, okay, would it be comfortable? Is that our goal? Do you want everyone to live in Texas? The idea is that, and this goes, by the way, this same conversation plays into not having babies. For the same reason we shouldn't have as many babies is the same reason that we also will have to deal with the repercussions of not having that many babies. And that is that we will have to probably move closer or be more isolated, or things just won't happen at the same pace. There will be a consequence. Not all consequences are bad. You know, instead of a consequence, just think of it as a result. Yes, an action will cause another action. There will be a result. There will be a reaction. Okay? Yes, and chat, great point, says the key thing is that capitalism relies on constant growth, which requires constant and growing supply of workers. Exactly. Ultimately, this is a capitalistic worry. They want more humans to work in the labor market, which, okay, this is why men will say, if women ruled the world, we wouldn't have skyscrapers. And I say to them, we wouldn't have to need skyscrapers because we wouldn't have to have a dick measuring contest. Not that women don't have penises, but you know what I mean? Yeah, like our egos wouldn't be, technically, this is a theory because we don't know how women would have turned out. We don't know how the genders would have been different. We don't know how anything would have been. But if the focus would be on family, if you were actually speaking from a progressive lens of valuing children, we wouldn't need skyscrapers. We wouldn't need the world to be the way that it is. It wouldn't look the way that it was. It wouldn't be capitalistic the way that it was, because if it was really focused on the health of a child, then you wouldn't have a parent who's away from the house 80 hours a week. You wouldn't be fighting over paternal and maternal leave, right? You wouldn't be fighting over these things, because if our value from a progressive lens, if the focus is on the health of the family, then we would be talking about working less outside the home. But see, when they talk about they're only talking about one person being at home. And who's that one person? The woman. So it becomes gendered. The conservatives say, oh yeah, a parent should be home with their kids, the woman. And then men, they grow up and wonder, hey, why don't my kids feel like they're close to me? I was like, you were never around. You didn't spend time with them on the weekends. You were tired after work and you didn't hang out with the kid. Like, fathers go to work all week and miss out on time bonding with their kids. And then the fathers who even express a desire to be home with their kids are made fun of in conservative bubbles because they're like, oh, you're home like a woman should be home. But in progressive bubbles, stay-at-home dads is great. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the real group of people that care about family values are the ones who are trying to find new ways for all families to exist and flourish in America. And there's only one group here that is suggesting families only look one way, and it's not working. It didn't work for our grandmas. It didn't work for our mothers. It's not working now. It didn't work. It doesn't work.
And you also speak about the role of...
And I don't just mean grandmas and mothers. It didn't work for our fathers and our uncles. It didn't work for anybody.
Cultural institutions in reviving family life, if you'd like to touch on that.
It's a really important part of it. In fact, we would say that as important as it is to get federal policy right, that those cultural factors, those institutions, as you put it so well, are up.
And yes, Discord, that is true. The spherical buildings could house more people. And in Europe, like in Croatia, they really value skyscrapers because more people can be housed. But just a reminder that if people had the right to choose how many babies they were having, a lot of people wouldn't have 10 kids. The reason there are so many families with 10 kids, there are Christian women I see every day on TikTok saying, if I didn't believe in Christianity and I didn't know I had a choice, I would not have had 10 fucking kids. Like, these women are often pressured and feel guilty if they're not bringing new babies into the universe every day when they were literally done 3 babies ago. But they feel guilted. They feel guilty. Like, that's your job. That's your whole meaning as a person, is to bring babies into the universe. So give us as many as God wills. How many babies are you having? As many as God wills. You ever heard that? Mm-hmm.
Stream, if you will, of the politics and policy of this. And so the most important of those cultural institutions, obviously, is the family. But our nuclear families are served by institutions like schools and
nuclear family, red flag,
universities and Rotary clubs and bowling leagues and so on. Very longstanding argument in the United States about the importance of those. And so we call for a role in federal policy there as well. For example, there has been a longstanding program of the federal government to fund what is called a marriage boot camp. That sounds sort of involuntary, but in fact, it's totally voluntary for couples that are not married but living together. We argue that one of the enhancements that federal policy could make is to turn that into a grant program, a block grant program, in which the people's tax money would be given to local nonprofit providers who would develop programs at the behest, at the request of these couples to learn how to be better couples. These are very...
But why do the couples need to be encouraged to be... Because again, it's that pressure. If we deconstructed patriarchy and deconstructed gender roles and deconstructed all these things, then we wouldn't need marriage boot camps like this to, quote, promote the family. We would need just regular therapy with regular medical professionals helping us with our regular ass life. We wouldn't need the government to spend, what, $1 billion to intervene. We would be doing it on our own. Hello?
Simple innovations that the United States has overlooked in the realm of policy that could aid these cultural institutions.
Yeah, your report delves into so many aspects of how we got here. And some of the things that really stood out to me, for example, were that people are often choosing to have a standard family, but say without initially getting married. And the research that shows that that doesn't really put them in the best stead for the longevity of their life together and their family. So if you could speak to that. Yeah.
It's such an important point. Thank you for asking the question and for delving into that detail in the paper, because the best, least politicized social science research shows that there is a certain sequence which almost guarantees success in life. Graduating from high school, going to college, getting married, being open to life, having children. And the great part about our paper is that it rests upon this unpoliticized social science research. The second aspect of this...
See, but this is you weaponizing that information, because though it is true that a lot of families do better in a lot of structures, it goes back to my theory about high compatibility partnerships. We're not marrying the right people because we're not taught about actually bonding with people over real values. And then we end up getting divorced and the children end up having a rougher time and everything turns out worse. But That's because we're not starting off on the right foot, because a lot of religious people encourage us to marry young before we've really formed into a person, before we even know what we like. We're encouraged from day one to only think of ourselves as marriage vessels, baby vessels, whatever else. Or you're born into certain families that also are still telling their kids what to do for college and how to be an adult and what they should wear and look like into their 40s. So obviously the problem is us, humanity, but they're trying to act like these studies that have been done, again, just because the study has a result doesn't mean we know the why. You must know why and how and what this means. You can't assume.
Is what people want. It is clear to us in analyzing this research and looking at public opinion surveys that while, of course, this is the United States and we respect people's decisions as individuals, the majority of American men and women do want to be married. They do want to be married and to have children. And so what we're saying is that it's high time that federal policy and state policy reflect these.
So I guess it wasn't patriarchally natural for people to get married and have kids then, huh? I guess it wasn't just nature, because if it was so natural, it is nature, we're always nature. But if it was so natural for us to always want to be married and always want to have kids and always want to be straight, I guess it would have happened. Don't you think it's also nature that we decided to be more cynical about dating, more picky about partnerships, more interested in mating with only certain people? Don't you think it's also part of nature that we were like, we're closed for business? You know what I'm saying? It's so funny when what's nature, what isn't nature?
Desires of the American people. In fact, that policy, as I have mentioned.
What do they always say? Don't play God. Don't try to control nature. Sounds like you're trying to mess with it pretty hard there, buddy.
Not only does it reflect the desires of our people to be married and to have families, it's actually undermined those desires. So we have a lot of work to do in Washington to update this policy.
To make it affordable, to make life affordable.
To reflect the mood of the American people. And I think what we will see is that when federal policymakers and state policymakers start making these decisions, that the cultural institutions will follow.
And I do want to dig into some of the key recommendations you have for Congress. But something else that really stood out to me was this talk in this very in-depth report about soulmates. And you say that in the report that the very idea of soulmates could actually be stopping some people from having happy, long-lived.
See? They want you to settle. Not that I believe in soulmates mythically, but I believe in high compatibility partners, meaning I like you as a person, very important, and we have the same values. Because remember, a lot of the people that are married don't like each other, which is the problem. Didn't I tell you? He is trying to get people to settle for people they don't even like.
Marriages. If you could speak to what the research shows that they can do to turn this around, this trend.
Yeah, there are just some great studies by my colleagues at Heritage, but also by some great social scientists, again, across the political spectrum. And this actually connects to your point about your opening point about loneliness, that many Americans are desiring to be married, and they have this sort of platinum level standard about finding their soulmate. And I can tell you from personal experience that I didn't realize my wife was my soulmate until we were married for a few years. It didn't mean that we didn't want to get married. It didn't mean that we didn't enjoy each other's company. We didn't enjoy married life. But that's the kind of thing that takes time. And so what that social science research proves is what we intuit. In fact, what we emote as human beings. And we're saying that federal policy and state policy should reflect a reality that people know anecdotally, as I has related an anecdote about myself, but also one that we know sort of universally. And I think what we're going to see is as federal policymakers talk about this, given this permission.
Listen, I always say this, my partner and I feel like soulmates, but we don't believe in soulmates per se. I mean, call it what you want to call it. We're just very compatible. We like each other so much. We like each other so much. And I want this for everyone. I want everyone to feel as safe and content and happy and free as I do in my marriage. But most people do not feel that way. Most people do feel trapped. And that's why we're having a crisis. And now his suggestion is to get people to trick themselves into feeling like that trapped feeling is normal, which is exactly the bullshit I'm trying to fight against. It's what I see time and time again. It's what I was in my 20s. Oh, this is normal. You're supposed to feel this way. Yeah, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to fight. Ugh. No.
If you will, from this social science research, that leaders of cultural institutions, whether they be churches, whether they be leaders of schools or universities, are going to be part of this national conversation as well. And that all is going to help the dynamic that you put your finger on.
Well, there's a lot of deep and wide-ranging.
Boo. Okay, let me see. Any interesting comments on this one? Probably not. Any plan to return to the 1950s social order that doesn't include a way for single income households? It's not just hot air. The fuck? That's the racist that funds the GOP? Great question from chat. Thank you. his chat, is this the racist? This is the race. That's what I'm saying. That's why them using black and brown faces to push their agenda is so fucking annoying. Okay, now look, this is the Heritage Foundation explaining the Save America Act, which we'll talk about later in the week. Okay, listen to this.
Save America Act is a very important election integrity bill that does three important things. It ensures that there's proof of citizenship for anybody who's registering to vote, creates a process for states to remove any non-citizens from their voter rolls, and 3, creates voter ID protections at the point of the polling place so that you can prove you are who you say you are when you've registered to vote. So what are the differences between SAVE Act and Save America Act? Save America Act includes the important provisions of proof of citizenship from the SAVE Act while adding voter ID provisions to ensure that at the ballot box, election integrity is preserved. It is so important because A, it's common sense. Americans understand that presenting an ID when they're getting a hotel room or they're getting on an airplane, that just makes sense. But also it's popular. Over 80% of the American people overall, 71% of Democrats, 95% of Republicans all agree that this is important. At the crux of our republic is the fact that we have elected representatives who represent us in Congress. So when our elections are off, our voice in American politics is off. So we need to make sure that citizenship is preserved and that right and duty is upheld.
First of all, I'm sorry, the amount of cutting they needed to do just to get that guy to say a sentence without whatever that was crazy. Okay, a few things I want you to understand about this because I think it's important. One, we're talking about this later in the week of why it's more important that we pay attention to it. But just for the record, because my partner asked me, right? Because I live in Croatia and I vote from here. I vote from here, guys. I vote from, you know what I mean? He goes, is that a thing? Like, can you guys vote without ID? I was like, I have never voted without my ID in the United States. He goes, oh yeah, let me Google it. Because I always hear that from Americans that like, you guys vote without IDs. I was like, that is not a thing. You are not voting without an ID. At some point in the process, an ID has been verified. And he looked it up. He's like, oh, why the fuck did they say that? I was like, racism. And also it's a trick. It's like a trick to, and this is what people are afraid of. It's going to end up creating some issues with like name discrepancies between partners. So this is why I want to share this. My partner and I do not share the last name. Like a lot of people, a lot of women do not share the same name as their passports, like, or their original names, or a lot of their paperwork is wonky, or some of us don't have our original social security cards, or some of us don't have our original birth certificates, or some of us don't have original stuff. And so what they're doing is they're making it really difficult to vote because they're hoping that it will impact voting, right? So my marriage, just not that we'll never have the same last name, but we have made the decision because of paperwork to keep our names separate. So just FYI, ladies, you don't have to take your man's name. He doesn't have to take your name. Nobody has to take anything. Okay? So, get that paperwork in order, get that stuff in order. But it just happened to work for us that it was going to be more of a headache for me to change my name. And I didn't want to go through that headache. You know how much I hate paperwork. But see, why do you hate paperwork? It's exhausting. It takes finances and spoons and effort. And then you don't want to do it. That's why they're making people do more paperwork as well. They are. They're going to make it harder on you. And for what reason? Because remember, this is coming out of the Heritage Foundation. This is suggested by the Heritage Foundation. It's not like it's suggested by American policymakers that are genuinely advocating for their constituents. This is coming from a third party. This is why the Heritage Foundation is so evil. Okay? So again, you take names if you want to do names. You can make up a third name if you want to make a name. You can do whatever you want. But if you need reassurance that it is not, your marriage is not, ending because you guys don't have the same last name, we don't share the same last name. And it's fine. We might in the future, like I said, but you don't have to, which is my point. And remember, the Heritage Foundation and all of these conservatives will tell you your marriage isn't real unless you have the same last name. Have you ever heard that? Growing up, I was told the proudest moment I'll ever have is getting my husband's name. And I'm like, I'm good, bro. Like, my identity isn't rooted in this last fucking name. But for some people, and I get it because it's like family legacy and stuff, boo. They really feel like that. Oh, are you really married though? Like, are you really married? It's the same people who say, are you really married if you guys don't like sleep in the same bed at night? Listen, call me Ricky and Lucy, but I get better sleep when I'm alone. Not that I don't love my partner sleeping with me. I do. But there is nothing better than stretching out on the bed. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, it's these people who decide that for them, the only version of marriage that is real is when it's a man and it's a woman, when you share the same last name, when you've produced babies, when you're married in a church, and when you go to church on Sundays. And I'm saying my marriage is just as valid as anyone else's marriage, and it doesn't have to look the way you did your marriage. And once again, in my perfect ideal world, you get to have your marriage. A reminder that in their perfect ideal world, my marriage doesn't get to exist. That's a problem. That's the actual problem. And that's why I say they're so afraid of progressives getting into control, because they think we're going to do to them what they do to us. But we're not, because we actually are pro-freedom. Progressives are more pro-freedom than conservatives could ever be. Conservatives wish they were as pro-freedom as progressives. They wish, okay? They wish. The irony of Republicans fighting so hard for big government while advocating for small government. Progressives want a smaller government in your personal business. They just want you to actually be able, the government to actually work for the people. We just want the government to actually do what it's supposed to do, which is benefit us, the people, work for us, the people, and not corporations. Whoa, whoa, crazy thoughts. Whoa, crazy. Oh my God, comrade, run away fast. Oh my God, it's a communist, a socialist. Oh my God, scary. Woo. Anyways, okay, I'm done being sarcastic. I'm being so petty. Okay. Great topic. Thank you for asking me to cover it. I'm very passionate about what is real marriage. Ooh, anyways.